Times does this ass-covering operation for the Israeli state, only to have defenders of Israel consider it a Hamas newspaper anyway. The Bill Ackman point comes to mind. The New York Times finally wrote a report on famine because it's become undeniable. And because these guys obviously have an interest in presenting themselves as a credible institution, when too many people are talking about an issue, they have to cover it. So they did. They covered the famine that is taking place in Gaza. Okay? And in the process, they basically turned around and actually got yelled at. Okay? They got yelled at nonstop because one of the people, one of the victims, one of the child victims of starvation, one of the child victims of starvation was a child with a genetic disability. Israel thinks this is a good way to flood the market with a counter narrative that, like, people are lying. People are lying about what's going on. Here, Bill Ackman has been posting about this nonstop. They did this thing, okay, where the New York Times basically stated that the photo, the viral image of one of the hundreds of children that have starved to death also had a genetic condition, okay? A genetic disability. These guys pushed this narrative by way of the New York Post and all these other Hasbara institutions, okay, to criticize the New York Times. The New York Times buckled. And in the process, they wrote this editor's note. The editor's note isn't as bad as I think people are reading it as, because it doesn't actually lend credence to the fucking smears, but I think it's ridiculous that they even had to post an editor's note such as this one after all of the reaction and the retaliation from pro-Israel groups. We have appended an editor's note to a story about Mohammed Zakaria al-Mutawak, a child in Gaza who was diagnosed with severe malnutrition. After publication, the Times learned he also had a pre-existing health problem. Read more below. Okay? Children in Gaza are malnourished and starving, as New York Times reporters and others have documented. We recently ran a story about Gaza's most vulnerable civilians, including Mohammed Zakaria al-Mutawak, who is about 18 months old and suffers from severe malnutrition. We have since learned new information, including from the hospital that treated him and his medical records, and have updated our story to add context about his pre-existing health problems. This additional details gives readers a greater understanding of his situation. Our reporters and photographers continue to report from Gaza bravely, sensitively, and at personal risk so that the readers can see firsthand the consequences of war. There was no reason to add this. Okay? The mother of the child has been interviewed. She said, "My son was born in December 2023 during the war without any chronic illnesses. Doctors diagnosed him with macrocephaly, which they said was caused by nutritional deficiencies during pregnancy due to the Israeli war. Over the past 4 months of displacement, his condition worsened due to the severe shortage of food. That is when he developed acute malnutrition." She shared with Misbar a photo of the child taken before his health deteriorated. This pre-existing condition to which the Times refers is, in fact, deliberate starvation by Israel's genocidal war criminals. Now understand something. Does this change the reality? Does this change the narrative at all? Yes. Israel is starving all children, including disabled children. How is this supposed to be a defense of Israel's starvation? This makes no sense. It just makes the situation worse. And there are examples of this, okay? There are examples of this in history. The example is the Holocaust. To claim that, actually Anne Frank died of typhus. Line in service of outright Holocaust denial. There were many in the death camps and in the concentration camps that died of other fucking untreated diseases, including typhus. It is insane. So Israel's military campaign has not only caused these conditions to arise in children, but it's also still starving that child, even if that child had a genetic predisposition that had nothing to do with Israel's actions. What are we talking about? Israel's still starving that fucking child. The only way you think this is an appropriate counter messaging campaign is if your head is slammed so far up other pro-Israeli accounts assholes that you think this does not look horrifying to the average individual that is watching from afar, that is shocked by the images of emaciated children. That's what's so crazy about this. These guys literally do not understand that people with a fucking soul out there that see these starving children and then hear someone who's defending Israel go, nah, that starving child also had a genetic condition. They don't look at that and go, oh my God, I've been duped. I guess that child with a genetic condition deserved to fucking die because of Hamas. They don't see it like that. They look at you and think you are 1,000,000 times worse than Hamas. Okay? Which is true, because you are. You are. If you defend Israel at any point, but especially now, you are 1,000,000 times worse. 1,000,000 times worse. It is ridiculous. It's not even comparable, okay? It is not even remotely comparable. No more but Hamas. That does not work. That never should have worked, but it certainly does not work at this stage. Ridiculous. But here is Bill Ackman. Even after the New York Times wrote this thing that they weren't even supposed to fucking add onto the story, the New York Times has caused enormous harm, and this is apparently the best they can do to correct their malfeasance. No apology, no acknowledgement for the harm they've caused. What harm? Israel should bring libel suits against the New York Times and other publications. These are open and shut cases. The only thing worse than starving people to death is reporting on people being starved to death. That's your argument? Your name will become a curse to future generations, just like Hitler and Eichmann. It's fucking insane. Israel said one of the starvation victims died from hypermetabolism related to diabetes. The main way to treat hypermetabolism is consistent with high caloric meals. If you think this is insane, this is German, still unbanned Twitch streamer calling himself a journalist and human rights activist. This has been ongoing for years with this Nazi. What? This is a German Twitch streamer? What? German journalist echoes Nazi propaganda by implying Gaza's kids starved by Israel are dying due to genetics and cousin marriages. But the EU sanctioned me at Germany's request for pro-Palestine journalism, accusing me of creating social and religious discord. After seeing so many children with hereditary diseases in Gaza in recent days for which Israel is not responsible, perhaps we should explain to the people in Gaza that one should not marry their first cousin or relatives in general, even if Muhammad the Prophet is said to have done so. This is, among many other things, the reason for the many sick children. In addition, such cousin marriages lead to a lower IQ between 5 and 13 points. Child mortality is up 50% higher, and it results in physical deformities. Not just a Twitch streamer, he's also a German politician. I don't know who the fuck this guy is, this Tobias Hutch guy. But I know everything I need to know about him and his fucking worldview. This is literally Nazi propaganda. But instead of saying this about the Jews, he is saying this about an appropriate target. A target that you can say this about, which is Muslims as a whole, but certainly the Palestinians that are currently experiencing the fucking Holocaust. Let's get back to Isaac Chodener's conversation with this far-right propagandist for Netanyahu. By the way, I'm not the only one to understand this. President Biden in October 2023 actually forced Israel to provide humanitarian aid, right? And then he said, I quote, if Hamas diverts or steals the assistance, they will have demonstrated once again that they have no concern for the welfare of the Palestinian people. and it will end. As a practical matter, it will stop the international community from being able to provide this aid. For a long time, people have been saying that there is going to be mass starvation in Gaza. Even Netanyahu a few months ago warned about reaching a point of starvation after they'd been complete shut off of aid into the territory. Subsequently, more aid was allowed in. You're saying all these warnings were essentially not correct. I say that Gaza is not the United States or Israel or Albania, in which the regime takes care of the wellness of its people. But you're aware there was a complete cutoff of aid for months, right? There was a cutoff from March to May. But here's the question. If the cutoff was between March and May, how come the hunger and starvation began in July? In which Isaac reports multiple aid experts told the New Yorker that the worst starvation would arrive sometime after a total aid cutoff because they have stockpiles of food. That's not how fucking starvation works. As Arif Hussein of the World Food Program told the New Yorker, it is a delayed effect. Households and markets will have some stocks, which they run out of if no further supplies arrive. And the answer is because Hamas steals the UN humanitarian aid in order to sell it or store it and sell it later. To which Isaac reports, the New York Times reported last week that the Israeli military never found proof that the Palestinian militant group had systematically stolen aid from the United Nations, the biggest supplier of emergency assistance to Gaza for most of the war, according to two senior Israeli military officials and two other Israelis involved in the matter. In fact, the Israeli military official said that the UN aid delivery system, which Israel derided and undermined, was largely effective in providing food to Gaza's desperate and hungry population. So the problem was fully created by Hamas, Segal continues to say. It continues to lie about. Not by an Israeli decision to genocide in Gaza. Israel is the only country on earth that provides humanitarian aid to the enemy in the middle of a war. It is the only country on earth. You're not providing aid to the enemy in the middle of a war. You're providing aid to an entire population of people that you are literally at war with. You are openly saying you're doing a genocide. The question is whether Israel will allow humanitarian aid to enter Gaza. They weren't paying for the UN aid. Many countries allow foreign aid to enter war zones. The only one interested in feeding Gazans these days is the GHF. There have been some right-wing ministers in the government, such as Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, who've made comments about how aid should not be allowed into Gaza. I assume you're going to say that's not the official policy of the government, correct? He says, right, exactly. Okay, but do Smotrich and Ben-Gvir want the genocide you said wasn't going on? It's a little confusing to have people in the government essentially saying out loud what people are accusing Israel of doing. This is the nature of the parliamentary regime in a multi-party coalition. Just to put things straight, Smotrich didn't say that humanitarian aid should not enter. He said that it should be done through the GHF. At multiple points, Isaac Chotiner butts in and does a correction. At multiple points during the war, Smotrich has blocked or spoken out against aid entering Gaza, and in 2024 stated, "No one in the world will allow us to starve 2 million people, even though it might be justified and moral in order to free the hostages." Remember that famous quote from Bezalel Smotrich? Ben-Gvir actually did say this, along with many other stupid things, in the first month of the war. He's just trying to shift the responsibility away from Netanyahu to Ben-Gvir and make it seem as though Netanyahu is simply stuck at the mercy of the far-right coalition that he's created. Okay? Remember, it's all bullshit. The majority of Israeli society knows that this is going on and are on board with it. They might change their attitude now that it's getting more coverage in the Western news. But up until this moment, they were fully aware of what was going on and they wanted it to happen. It's not just Bezalel Smotrich. It's not just Ben-Gvir. It's not just Netanyahu. The Jewish demographic of Israel, by and large, agrees with this starvation policy. Okay? There are those who oppose it. That is true. And their numbers are growing. For sure. But throughout the past 22 months, there has been overwhelming support for this. Make no mistake. Israel's supporters' insistence that the government is responding to the global outcry over starvation simply goes against what Israeli leaders are actually doing. They're working on a new plan for a siege of the Strip, which would, again, cut off all humanitarian aid. Netanyahu held a cabinet meeting on Monday evening devoted to Gaza, during which the military presented a new plan for a siege of the Strip, which would, again, cut off all humanitarian aid, according to the Khan broadcaster. This is not just the position of a big part of Netanyahu's coalition. It's the majority opinion of Jewish Israelis. Again, this is not my demographic predesignation. It is the Israeli government's demographic predesignation. Okay? They bracket off Israeli society in two. Okay? They say either you are Jewish, you're a Jewish Israeli, or you're Arab. When they say Arab, what they actually mean is Christian or Muslim. Okay? What they're actually referencing is Palestinian citizens of Israel, people that were given citizenship in 1948. Okay? This population of Muslims and Christians make up 25% of Israeli society. They are relegated to second-class status. Okay? They're talking about the Druze, they're talking about the Muslims, and they're talking about the Christians, the non-Jews, Jewish versus non-Jewish. The reason why they have this population designation is not just because Judaism is an ethno-religion. The reason why they do this is because they are an ethno-religious supremacist society. It's that simple. Even though the majority of Jews in Israel are Arab Jews, Jews of Arab background, Jews of Arab descent from the MENA region, they are categorized as Jews. Okay? They are not categorized as Arabs. I have had a conversation with someone who is of Arab descent, but is Jewish, if you recall. It was a teenager in Israel. And he actually got mad when I said, well, you're Arab. Like, your family is from an Arabic country. Like, from an Arab country. And he was like, no, I'm Jewish. The categorization for Arab Jews in Israeli society, the specific designation for it is Mizrahi. Okay? There are Ashkenazi Jews, Eastern European Jews that are white, many of them also living in the United States of America, the majority. There are Persian Jews as well. Okay? And there are Arab Jews that are Mizrahi and Sephardic. Okay, Sephardic Jews are from Spain or by way of Spain through the MENA region. But these designations, these separate designations, are all bracketed under Jewish. Okay? Full rights. But in any case, I sidestepped away from the Israeli demographics because I always have to repeat that point because I think it's pretty illuminating about how Israel treats its population. This is not just the position of a big part of Netanyahu's coalition, it's a majority opinion of Jewish Israelis. Here's one IDI poll from February 2024 showing 68% oppose aid into Gaza. A Channel 13 survey from May 2025 shows 53%, but it included Palestinian citizens of Israel. Palestinian citizens of Israel are the non-Jews in Israel that have Israeli citizenship. Okay? So understand that this position is not an unpopular one. It is one that is popularly backed by the Israeli population. Regardless of what some people try to present it as. Oh, this is like not the majority opinion. This is just like a loud minority or anything like that. It's fucking bullshit. Not that it even matters. It does not matter. You want to know why it doesn't matter? Because if America said tomorrow, stop this, cut it out, you're done, Israel would have to cut it out. Okay? Make no mistake. Yair Golan, the center-left politician, said on the fourth day of the war that we should not allow humanitarian aid into Gaza until the hostages are back. So it was a consensus. If you look at the indictments in The Hague against Israel, you would see many quotes, and many of them belong to the center-left, which is correct, by the way. He's trying to defend this human rights violation by pointing to the rest of Israeli politicians as well. Center-left my ass. This is what's confusing. If no aid should be let in, then people are going to starve. And you're saying that a consensus in Israel, but you're also saying Israel's not going to starve anyone. No, because it's two different things. First of all, there's a difference between a war that lasts, a few weeks and one that lasts 2 years. And second, it's theoretical because when President Biden arrived in Israel in the second week of the war, there was a decision made by the Israeli cabinet that humanitarian aid would enter Gaza. Israel cut off aid completely, as we talked about, for over 2 months between March and May. And then after that, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was set up. And it was set up in part because Netanyahu didn't want to be seen as allowing aid into Gaza. That's why it was given this American imprimatur, because he didn't want to piss off the far right, which doesn't want aid to enter. No, not at all. This was a Smotrich initiative. So why is Israel denying they are behind it? I guess because it would not help Gazans if the food had an Israeli flag on it. Okay, go on. That seems... There are rumors that Israel is funding the GHF. I haven't seen proof so far, but Israel is behind it. But I have to ask you something. You spoke about 20 children who died a year ago in Gaza from dehydration. If it happened, it's a tragedy. I don't think there is anyone who wants to see babies and children die. Again, bullshit. Israeli society or Israeli politicians, especially right-wing Israeli politicians, do absolutely want to see Israeli babies and children die, Palestinian babies and children die, because they have said as so. They've literally stated their desire for this. So the idea that they don't want to see this is fucking bullshit. Many people in the Israeli cabinet, maybe people in the Israeli cabinet, but beyond that, there isn't a single Israeli minister that wants to see babies die. You know how I know it? Because Israel has a nuclear weapon. If Israel really wanted to have a genocide, it would have done it already. I know it's a waste of time to speak to a liberal news outlet in the United States about the numbers. You won't find a single initiative by an Israeli cabinet minister that wants to kill babies on purpose. You know about Ben Gvir and the wedding. Which one? Where there was dancing. Which one? Pretending to stab Palestinians. It was a disgusting event in which someone stabbed the picture of a baby, and it was disgusting. This was in 2015 at a wedding that Ben Gvir attended. Dancing guests held up a photograph of a Palestinian baby who had been burned to death by right-wing Israeli extremists several months earlier, and one guest stabbed the picture with a knife. Ben Gvir was the lead arsonist attorney. He later called the display at the wedding stupidity. And there were indictments because Israel is a law and order state. Ben Gvir didn't do it. Maybe he participated. I wouldn't have taken part in an event like this. That's good to know. Okay. There are 7 big reports in the New Yorker about the so-called starvation in Gaza, but there are 0 reports about a genocidal event, the massacre of Druze in Syria over the last few weeks, and 0 reports about 7 million displaced persons in Congo. Bitch, you don't care about any of that. What do you mean? Your Honor, you're accusing me of being a serial killer. And while that might be true, think about all the children that have also been killed by other serial killers. That doesn't matter. You are the one who is currently being examined here. It is your individual crimes. You can't just turn around and go, what about all the other people that are doing murders? That is fucking ridiculous. I just want to offer the idea that the West preoccupied with the state of Israel murdering and genociding Gazans and Palestinians, even when there is no proof. You just said so-called starvation. In your own piece, you quote someone saying, mass starvation seems inevitable without a change of strategy. But it's a little confusing because if Hamas decides who eats, then why is Israel changing its policy? If Hamas has all the food, it can do whatever it wants. Why has there been panic in official Israeli circles that things are getting out of hand? Hamas does it, but the world blames Israel for it. But why will a policy change by Israel matter if Hamas is controlling everything? Yeah, that's literally what Ethan Klein had on a story talking about Sudan. Because once you flood the area with food, you actually prevent this argument from being heard. There is footage today from the markets in central Gaza in which there's plenty of bread and flour and food and each and every kind of commodity. Isaac writes, when I followed up to ask what footage he was referring to, he sent me a clip that he said was from the Abu Ali Express, which Haaretz has called a news channel for PSYOPs. The video appears to show 2 young men in a room containing some food supplies, putting small snack packages in a bag. In 2021, Ben Gvir tweeted a photo of 2 of you together and said that you signed a personal dedication for him in the book you had written. What was it? I don't really remember. I sold 80,000 copies of the book. Anyway, I'm going to skip that part. Let's take a step back. As you see it, what is the long-term goal of the war at this point? The long-term goal is to dismantle Hamas and Gaza both militarily and as a regime. The Times Magazine had a big piece a few weeks ago basically saying that this war has been continuing for political reasons for well over a year, and that Netanyahu essentially knew that there was nothing left to accomplish militarily a year ago. And one thing that's strange to me is that so much of the debate, both in America and Israel, includes these impassioned arguments about the purpose of the war. But the article and much other reporting about Netanyahu has made me think it's not even clear he believes he can truly dismantle Hamas. What do you make of that dissonance? The smartest thing for a politician to do, especially Netanyahu, is to win this war as fast and as decisively as possible. It is very unpopular to have an ongoing war, which is bullshit. Israeli society literally gets behind and rallies around the flag anytime Benjamin Netanyahu chooses to actively fucking decide to bomb another country. Israeli society, by and large, gets behind him. Also, the idea that you want to disband Hamas is also bullshit. They don't want Hamas to disband. Hamas has said that they would disband. They've literally said that they would disband and allow a technocratic committee to take place and take over the control of the Gaza Strip. They've literally said that as a condition for the ceasefire. Benjamin Netanyahu refused to allow that to happen because if Hamas goes away, they literally, or if the hostages are released and Hamas goes away, then there's no other reason to continue this fucking death and destruction campaign, because the ultimate goal is to ethnically cleanse the entire fucking strip. Okay? It is to militarily occupy the Gaza Strip. It is to purge the Gaza Strip of all Palestinians. Now, the question is there an alternative for a faster end to the war? And there is one, that Israel withdrawing to the original borders, thus leaving Hamas free to rearm itself. We'd exchange all the hostages for every single terrorist and murderer who is imprisoned in Israel, including children, by the way. He's talking about children. Israel has 10,000 plus Palestinians under administrative detention with no real trial whatsoever that they have kidnapped. 2,000 plus of them that Israel has kidnapped since October 7, as a matter of fact. They picked them up from the Palestinian citizens of Israel. They picked them up from the West Bank, specifically as a bargaining chip. That's how little they care about the safety and security and dignity of Palestinians. They do not treat them as anything but fucking bargaining chips. The Israeli government has allowed for literal teenagers to be detained indefinitely, permanently. Okay? There are so many war crimes and so many things that are otherwise considered completely illegal in this nightmare, this hellish dystopian nightmare of a fucking country that is just regular practice. In my opinion, and Netanyahu's opinion, and in the opinion of many Israelis, this would necessarily lead to yet another October 7 if they just like fucking withdraw from Gaza. So they have to ethnically cleanse Gaza. Oops, nothing else that they can do. After doing those horrible things, it would pave the way for another event. Even the leaders of the opposition, most of them, when you ask them whether they would end the war and have the same borders, say no. This is why you support moving all Gazans from Gaza. No, I don't support moving all Gazans from Gaza. You commented on Trump's proposal to remove Gazans from Gaza, that there is no way in the world that we could have hoped for something better. But Trump did not offer deportation. He offered immigration. The fact now is that Gazans are not allowed to leave Gaza. Egypt blocks all the roads. Egypt blocks all the roads. You block all the roads. You make Egypt block all the roads. All I want to do is let Gazans be like Isaac or Amit and to live wherever they want. If it's Gaza, so be it. If it's another country, so be it. Now, this is also bullshit. And here's the reality. The reason why this is bullshit, and unfortunately, this is the extent of Isaac Chotiner's like worldview, and it's this major limitation, is that he could just very quickly turn around and say, there is a current proposal that the Israeli Knesset has fielded, okay, that dictates a concentration camp being created in the Rafah area. This concentration camp will house all of the remaining Palestinians, and its sole purpose is to deny them freedom of travel unless they are being deported out of the Gaza Strip. That is the current Israeli policy. Trump said they would not be permitted to return to Gaza. First of all, I'm not a spokesperson for Trump. You said you could not have hoped for something better. I support the idea of letting Gazans emigrate. And that's where it ends. And while we were having this back and forth, while we were reading this, another country, this time Canada, has mentioned their intention to recognize the state of Palestine at the UN General Assembly in September, subject to commitment by the Palestinian Authority to conduct reforms, Canadian Prime Minister says. Once again, this probably resembles the bullshit French conditional state recognition. You cannot do a shitty state recognition, a false state recognition without actual sovereignty. You cannot do this if you are still, one, arming the IDF, continuing to fucking fund and facilitate the Israeli society broadly. No, it's the French one that originally started. And then the British one came, but the British one was even worse than that because its conditions were, we won't even recognize the fucking state of Palestine if Israel allows aid to come in. Yeah. Two-state solution document endorsed by France, European, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Qatar, the Arab League, circulated at UN and revealed by Times of Israel, calls for dissolving UNRWA without implementing the right of return for Palestinian refugees. I explain. This is Ali Abunima of the Electronic Intifada, okay, one of the more reliable outlets in terms of covering what goes on the ground in Palestine. The document talks about the achievement of a just solution to the Palestinian refugee issue without mentioning or reaffirming the right of return. This is long established peace-process code for abrogating the right of return, resettling Palestinian refugees outside Palestine so that Jewish demographic supremacy is not threatened, and at best, monetary compensation. It talks about UNRWA handing over its duties not to the government of an independent Palestinian state, but to prepared and empowered Palestinian institutions in the Palestinian territory. In other words, all this takes place prior to the supposed independence of a supposed Palestinian state. It is a formula for dismantling any international institutions and frameworks that protect Palestinian rights. There is much more in this document revealing its anti-Palestinian hostility, including demanding the disarmament of the resistance and handing over its weapons under occupation to the Palestinian Authority and endorsing a demilitarized Palestinian state, while the occupier that is perpetrating a Holocaust retains all of its capacity for genocide. We know what that looks like. It's called the West Bank. And 40,000 Palestinians have been displaced since October 7 in the West Bank. Israeli settlers, armed to the teeth by the Israeli government, getting weapons from the United States government, will go in and kill Palestinians and use Molotov cocktails to permanently displace Palestinians from their ancestral homes. And then the IDF will continue its bloodshed by killing the Palestinians that even are in the vicinity of the Israeli settlers. That's what they want across the board. In the same document endorsed by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan, Turkey, and European countries, etc., they demand that the Palestinian resistance completely disarm in the context of ending the genocide in Gaza and hand over its weapons to Israel's proxy, the Palestinian Authority. Remember, the Palestinian Authority is the governing body of the West Bank. The Palestinian Authority is a part of the Israeli security apparatus. Make no mistake. Regardless of what Benjamin Netanyahu says now about the Palestinian Authority, claiming that it's actually also just like Hamas, and that no statehood should ever exist for Palestinians and Palestine in general, the Palestinian Authority is functionally an arm of the Israeli security apparatus. They work in unison with the Israeli security apparatus. They are the second least popular entity amongst Palestinians in the region. Obviously, the number one is Israel. There is no reference, of course, to the entity committing genocide and disarming. On the contrary, all this is meant to ensure the security of the genocidal settler colony and leave its victims totally defenseless. In other words, they make ending the genocide conditional on Israel achieving its goals. Make no mistake, while this is a step in the right direction, I have also stated that this is completely fucking ridiculous. It's only a matter of impact due to how little, especially these Western European states have offered recognition to Palestinians and Palestine as a nation state. But it's definitely too little too late. And not only is it too little too late, but it's a bait and switch. Yeah, The Onion on October 10th, 2023. New York Times issues apology for reporting Palestinian deaths. 3 days after October 7, mind you. And here it is, the New York Times literally issuing an apology for reporting Palestinian deaths. The reason why they're engaging in this this newfound recognition is because they need to soothe the interest of the masses. It has gotten to a point where people are understandably, unimaginably angry and resentful. They have destroyed all notion of the democratic process. Okay? The issue of Israel's genocide being committed with Western weapons is at the heart of the main contradiction that liberal democracies never want you to address. Overwhelming majorities of the public want this to be ended. Overwhelming majorities of the public kind of understand their government's involvement in this process, and yet the politicians themselves refuse to acknowledge it and refuse to do something about it when they have all of the power in the world to stop it. Yes, as friend of the show Felix Biederman has stated, this is like a preemptive land acknowledgement. That is what they're doing. They're offering a preemptive land acknowledgement here. Anyone who has continued to defend Israel at this point, regardless of how they're engaging in this defense, maybe they're saying Israel's doing something bad and it's fucked up, but also the other side is way worse, and we have to let Israel continue doing this, is a fucking monstrous piece of shit. It is an increasingly smaller and smaller audience that is demanding this kind of commentary. They will be forever remembered as the Holocaust deniers that they are. They will have participated. When the dust is settled, everyone will know that they have participated in defending and continuing the modern day Holocaust that we have all seen with our own two fucking eyes. Some, as the walls are closing in, refuse to reckon with that reality. They continue to double down, triple down. Others, at least, are quiet. Okay? They realize that the attitude has swung dramatically in the direction of opposing this genocide. So they just know better and they shut the fuck up. But for the Ethan Kleins and the Destinies and the Brett Stevenses at the New York Times of the world, they continue to defend Israel's genocide because they're just stuck. They're unable to recognize, I guess, that they should most likely keep quiet at this point, to shut the fuck up. Even the Asmengolds of the world recognize the situation is untenable, and even they, from what I understand, every now and then keep railing against Israel. What I urge people, you mean they should shut the fuck up as a function of self-preservation? I think they shouldn't shut the fuck up. I think they should be yelling loudly every single day for Israel to stop and to say they were wrong. That is the right thing to do. And there will still be plenty of people who will remember all of the child murder that they fucking actively advocated for. Okay? This should be a moment of repentance. But I understand the situation in front of us. I get it. I recognize it. Okay? So I understand that for public pressure to mount and to continue, there is need for those who have kept quiet, who have actually defended Israel initially, to come out and unconditionally offer support to the Palestinian victims of this Holocaust. Okay? We can figure out what people's previous positions were later. I won't forget. And I know plenty of you will never forget either. And it's totally understandable that you don't. But at this stage, every single person, regardless of how much they fucking dick rode Israel initially, should be screaming bloody murder. Okay? And if they don't because their conscience shifted, they should be doing it out of self-preservation. For DropSite News, I investigated the information warfare specialist, including a Columbia teacher who helped dismantle Gaza's aid network, install the militarized GHF, and spin the narrative around famine and the daily massacre of starving Palestinians. The Information Warfare Consortium shaping the Gaza Holocaust Foundation's PR offensive. Bro, I'm over here talking about a fucking ongoing Holocaust, and this motherfucker's like, were you not invited to this AMP pool party? What the fuck are you talking about, chatter? Are you okay? Is your brain all right? Guess where that teacher worked before Columbia? Jennifer Counter of the Gaza Human Starvation Foundation is also a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, another entity that Ethan Klein loves and has propped up as defending Palestinians. Huh, interesting. But why were you very harsh with Jon Stewart yesterday? Those people are way worse than him, bro. We should team kill no matter the teammates. I even side with Nicholas Fuentes on this topic. I don't care. The enemy is my enemy is temporarily my friend. First of all, fuck Nicholas Fuentes. And secondly, the reason why I'm harsh with Jon Stewart is because I know Jon Stewart has a much more radical position. And people should be bold. People should be unafraid to be bold in this circumstance. Just like AOC. I wasn't against Jon Stewart. I just wish that Jon Stewart would be more aggressive in his commentary. Because the moment demands it. Because when people like Jon Stewart start talking like myself, then that gives permission for others to also come out and have harsh statements that are a necessity at this point. Also, fuck Nicholas Fuentes once again. Like, get the fuck out of here. The reason why I'm critical of someone like Jon Stewart is the same reason why I'm critical of someone like Bernie Sanders, and the same reason why I'm critical of someone like AOC. The moment requires these people to be more aggressive in their stances, to say, no, it's over. Israel is done. Okay? That's it. Because when more and more people say that, especially at a time like this, people that are supposed to be leaders in this movement, people who others look up to in this movement, will then feel emboldened, will then feel galvanized in the correct position, because that is the correct position. Okay? The Zionist project is over. It's done. It was always designed around ethno-religious supremacy and exterminationist policies from the inception of the Israeli state all the way down to the final solution, the Holocaust that Israel is implementing in Gaza. People like Bernie Sanders, people like AOC cannot just sit around and get lapped by cynical grifters like Nick Fuentes or cynical grifters like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Tucker Carlson. This is completely unacceptable. Fill the fucking void. What are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? People feel very comfortable taking popular ownership of legal concepts like free speech and due process and murder, but when it comes to the Jewish state announcing and then committing a genocide, all of a sudden it's for the experts only. Here's Bernie Sanders' take that was frustrating to hear once again. Bernie Sanders, talking to CNN, had this to say.
The point yet where you would call what's happening in Gaza a genocide?
You can use whatever word you want.
But Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying that she's the first Republican to go there.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Look, genocide is a legal term. What is going on now, clearly, is absolutely horrific. 60,000 people dead and 140,000 who have been wounded. But the important point is not what you call it. It is horror. And I think the whole world knows that. The answer is, what the hell do we do about it? should the United States taxpayer, should your taxpayer dollars go to support a government that is doing it? That is the most important issue. So immediately, you got to get ceasefire, you got to get humanitarian aid in, but the United States cannot continue to aid and abet the Netanyahu government doing what it's doing.
Do you want to see United States personnel on the ground helping distribute aid? I mean, what is another?
United States personnel are on the ground helping distribute aid, in air quotes. It's called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and they're participating in the slaughter of Palestinian civilians. The only implementation at this point of U.S. military involvement should be to invade Tel Aviv, okay? Should be to forcibly stop Israel. That is the appropriate and just response. It will never happen, obviously, because Israel's actions are directly in line with America's interests in the region, something that I keep responding to over and over again, something that I keep repeating over and over again, and it would never get to that point regardless, because all it would take is one fucking phone call. Okay? It would never get to that point. That's why BDS is the most peaceful solution to stop Israel from behaving this way. The Financial Times, unless the Israeli government agrees to an immediate end to the war and a surge of aid into Gaza, Western countries should be sanctioning Netanyahu and his government. Yeah. And if Israel chooses not to stop, then they should fucking invade. Okay? That's how this works. You either have a pressure campaign, you either have a pressure campaign and you have a boycott, divestments, and sanctions that are implemented against the state of Israel, and that you have Western nations cut ties with Israel, and the fear of those ties being cut for Israel is enough for them to stop doing what they're doing, or if they continue doing it, then you fucking invade. It's that simple. It is that simple, okay? We invaded Nazi Germany. If we were actually operating on the same boundaries, if there was any sort of like morality left within the Western civilization that they claim to care about, they would fucking invade Israel militarily and force them to stop. Am I misremembering, or were you hesitant to do BDS initially? No, you're misremembering. I've never been hesitant to do BDS. Bernie did mention stopping arms shipments. Honestly, that's just being realistic. No. What is realistic is not what Bernie says. What is realistic is that mentioning the stoppage of arms shipments, both defensive and offensive, is only a realistic possibility if the likes of Bernie Sanders are actually saying we have to cut all ties to Israel right now. All ties. All economic ties. We have to do a sanctions package that no one has ever seen before. A sanctions package that resembles Russia's sanctions package. That's what Bernie should be saying, so that average politicians that are on the fucking center on this issue, even though there is no both sides of the fucking genocide, should come to terms with that idea. The position that Bernie has had since 2016, or even far before that, which is to cut off weapons transfers to Israel. It would never get to that point anyway, which is why I keep saying all it takes is a fucking phone call. When Israel first launched its offensive, most of the world stood by a nation traumatized by the abhorrent October 7th attack by Hamas, the Palestinian militant group that killed 1,200 people. Okay? 400 military, by the way, 800 civilians. Other nations supported Israel's right to self-defense, to hold the perpetrators to account, and to attempt to secure the release of 250 hostages seized. Hamas should have released all hostages long ago. Hamas tried to release all hostages long ago. Israel denied this opportunity. Hamas should have released all hostages long ago is meaningless because Hamas has tried to release all hostages from the get-go. I think it was October 10th, 2023, when Hamas said, if Israel doesn't invade the Gaza Strip, we will release all hostages, as long as Israel releases all the Palestinian hostages. In any case, Israel's offensive is long gone beyond all bounds of proportionate response. The longer it has continued, the more it has borne the hallmarks of a vengeful assault by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right government to destroy the very fabric of Palestinian society. This off-ramp that they're giving to Israel is an off-ramp that I said the Democrats should have been using long ago. The idea that this is Netanyahu's war. Maybe, with all of the untold, incalculable human casualties, the death and destruction that befall the Palestinian society in the Gaza Strip, 4 months in, the Democrats should have been talking about an off-ramp, laying the responsibility entirely, squarely on Benjamin Netanyahu's war cabinet. It is far too gone for that. It's gone. It's done. It doesn't work. And I think these guys are still pushing this line because they think it will work. It will not work. Israel is a pariah state. People are repulsed by Israel. People are repulsed by Israeli tourists as a direct consequence of Israel's actions. This is understandable. If you don't want this enmity, you have to be very loud about your distaste. You have to be very loud about your anger and resentment. Okay? I don't care anymore when people say, well, this is racist. You're being anti-Semitic because people are being fucking rude to Israeli tourists. Okay, stop fucking filming yourselves screaming death to Arabs. May your village burn when you get denied service at a fucking institution that is not in Israel. The fuck do you mean? Nobody cares. Nobody cares about your fucking feelings. If you're defending this, you deserve that enmity. It's that simple. What do you mean? Can you imagine Germans being like, we are being ruthlessly bullied everywhere during the fucking Holocaust, during World War II? Why won't anybody think about the Nazi Party members during World War II? By the way, Germans did say this. Germans literally did say this. Except there was also a far larger percentage of the German population that was fucking imprisoned in the process of resisting against Nazi Germany's violence. 800,000 of them. Okay? 800,000 Germans were arrested and sent to concentration camps for resisting against Nazi fucking Germany. There are not 800,000 Israelis that have resisted against the Israeli fascism. Okay? What the fuck are we doing? At most, there are like 800. Half of them are in this fucking chat every day. Anti-Zionist Jews living in Israel. Anyway. Yes, I saw pieces of the Majority Report's interview with the Israeli conscientious objector who literally fucking criticized AOC on the Majority Report and was like, what are you doing with this defensive weapons bullshit? Everyone in Israeli society understands that as long as America is committed to the defense of Israel, Israel gets to be as violent as it wants. That motherfucker lives in Israel, okay? That motherfucker lives in Tel Aviv. He's the one saying it's bullshit. This defensive weapons nonsense is fucking bullshit. What are we talking about? The pattern is repeated on a lesser scale in the occupied West Bank. Israeli military operations and Jewish settler violence have forced thousands from their homes. A small but increasing number of genocide scholars are concluding that Israeli actions in Gaza amount to genocide. On Monday, B'Tselem, a respected Israeli rights group, reached the same verdict. In a report, it said Israel's policy and its horrific outcomes leads to the unequivocal conclusion that Israel has taken a coordinated action to intentionally destroy Palestinian society in the Gaza Strip. Took them far too long to get to this point, by the way, which is why I kind of understand why people sometimes will get mad at B'Tselem as well. But in any case, Bernie Sanders being like, oh, well, I'm not a legal expert, I don't care about the term genocide, is ridiculous. As Dylan Saba correctly points to, he says people feel very comfortable taking popular ownership of legal concepts like free speech and due process and murder, but when it comes to the Jewish state announcing and then committing genocide, all of a sudden it's for the experts only. This is genocide denialism. Dylan Saba is Jewish. This is genocide denialism, and it's inarguably rooted in Jewish supremacy. I remember in 2021 when he berated us for using the term apartheid. Sanders is a pattern of racist tone policing, but it's more dangerous here because the horror is not a punishable crime. Genocide is. Someone like Bernie Sanders, as I've talked with Noah Colwyn over and over again about this issue, okay? Someone like Bernie Sanders is supposed to be a leader here, okay? What is this? Someone like Bernie Sanders is supposed to be a fucking leader here. He's supposed to be, as the most popular Jewish politician in the country, he is supposed to be like, he's supposed to be saying like, I'm Jewish. This is a fucking genocide. It's not being committed in my name. It's ridiculous. We have to literally stop all ties with Israel tomorrow. You are supposed to be the tip of the spear. That is my expectation, okay? You cannot be a fucking liberal Zionist. What is this? Someone sent this to me.
Genuinely cannot believe how dumb Hassan Piker haters are. For those of you who do not know who that is, this is Hassan Piker. He is a progressive socialist Twitch streamer who is very popular. And he has a lot of haters who are absolute mouth breathers. To be clear, you know exactly who I'm talking about right now. I don't consider people who root their dislike of Hassan Piker in reasonable and intellectually honest disagreement of his work and behavior to be Hassan haters. No. Real deal Hassan haters who cite childish NPC reasons of disliking him will shock you with how dumb they are. Here's an example. I often make videos about my friend Hassan, pictured here. Him and his family live in the Gaza Strip, which is currently experiencing IPC Stage 5, which entails catastrophic levels of food insecurity and famine, all at the hands of the IOF, and I am helping direct contributions to their GFM campaign. Every single time, without fail, multiple peoples in at least one of my comment sections will comment something to the effect of, isn't Hassan Piker a millionaire Twitch streamer? Why would anyone donate money to him? Ha, so much for socialism.
I think this has to be bots, right? It can't be just like people who are NPCs and behaving like bots. It's got to be like, whenever there is a mention of my name, there's got to be some bots that fucking write like the same preconceived nonsense. I would be shocked if they were only just bots, because that doesn't make any fucking sense.
In these videos where I talk about my friend Hassan, I literally always include pictures of a child and paragraphs of context that they live in the fucking Gaza Strip. It's like they hear the word Hassan and go into tunnel vision attack mode. I shouldn't have to explain how first names work to anybody besides a toddler. Wipe the drool off your phone screen, my dude. Your obsession with this man is straight up unhealthy, and you are putting everyone on Earth at high risk of catching a fucking brain aneurysm from reading your comments. Anyways, back to my friend Hassan. I do have an update. They were recently displaced yet again, which of course means that any semblance of stability that they had was completely and utterly upended.
Re-upload because less people who know Hassan Piker, because less people know who Hassan Piker is than I expected, so I just added that context. Oh,
They are currently safe as they can possibly be given the
So wait, do you like Hassan Piker or no? Wait, so the kid is a Twitch streamer? People don't know Hassan? We love Hassan.
circumstances, but they are still very much in need of contributions. To
Fucking
get to their
insane.
campaign,
He's literally talking about a little kid in the Gaza Strip that is experiencing genocide, and there are still motherfuckers who are like, what about Hassan? I now want to find some of these comments to see if my suspicion is correct, though.
and go to my bio, click here, and then click here. Seriously, wipe the drool off your phone screen. Sometimes I
Would you agree that Bernie serves the purpose of rehabilitating Israel's image rather than to defend Palestinians? You guys, there's never been a moment, contrary to what whatever some dumb fuck on TikTok says, there's never been a moment that I have said Bernie Sanders is completely on board with this with the situation. Okay, it's just not the case. I have always been critical of Bernie Sanders' liberal Zionism, but I also match Bernie Sanders' statements with the rest of Congress. Okay, with the rest of Congress, and on that front, he is unfortunately above and beyond, specifically because of how horrible the rest of Congress is when it comes to the issue of Israel. My expectations of Bernie Sanders, however, is supposed to be that he goes way further than the average politician as someone who has been to Israel, as someone who has been committed to anti-imperialist sentiment throughout his multiple decades-long career, okay? At this stage, you cannot be outflanked by anyone in Congress, especially if you are someone who is an independent, especially if you are someone who has actively communicated a different position, who has never shied away from literally calling into question our allegiance with Israel when you were running for fucking president. Okay? The guy that says we need to cut off weapons to Israel cannot fucking turn around and say we need to cut off weapons to Israel right now. Okay? That same guy should be saying it's over. Israel is done. We need to invade Israel is what he should be saying. Yeah. Your expectation is that he pushes the Overton window for Israel by speaking boldly as the most popular Jewish congressperson, like you said earlier. He would expand the permission structure greatly. Exactly. Exactly. I don't think this is an insane expectation from Bernie Sanders either. Optics on this matters. Bernie Sanders being Jewish and socialist matters. Okay? Bernie Sanders being a Jewish socialist here matters quite a bit because Rashida Tlaib can scream bloody murder every single day, but racist fucking Americans are never going to listen to her. As a matter of fact, she's been censured by Congress. Randy Fine, on the other hand, has not been, even though he has directly said genocidal things over and over again in defense of Israel's genocide. Rashida Tlaib was censured for saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I have not forgotten, okay? Sorry, that is the reality. That's the same reality why so many people still come in here to this day and call me a fucking terrorist, okay? Hassan versus no being a terrorist. Like, do you see? Do you understand? This is the average dumb fuck American, okay? Well, not the average dumb fuck American. This number is getting smaller and smaller every day. If I were to ask this person, do you like what Israel is doing? He would probably say, nah, Israel sucks, but you shouldn't hand it to the terrorist groups or something because they're cowards, okay? Phantom Hammer Murderer, do you like what Israel is doing? Have you taken Israel's dick out of your mouth? A year ago, these guys would say, fuck you, Israel's in the right. I hope they fucking crater Gaza. Now, even these guys say, I don't really like what Israel's doing, but you fucking love terrorism. Yeah, fuck you. Why is AOC not on the list? She is. The 10 members of Congress calling Israel's genocide in Gaza a genocide. Rashida Tlaib, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, Summer Lee, Al Green, Delia Ramirez, Bonnie Watson-Coleman, John Garamendi, and Marjorie Taylor fucking Greene. I'm surprised Tom Massey is not on there. Yeah, Greg Kazar also not on there. Incredibly disappointing. He's the head of the Progressive Caucus. It's fucking over. AOC cannot figure out which side she's on? No. That's the worst part about this. AOC's positions do not make sense. Do you understand? Because she has called it a genocide long before many members of Congress ever did, with the exception of some on this list. Okay? She's called it a genocide already, which makes her recent statements about defensive weapons to Israel even dumber. If you think that a supposed ally is committing a fucking genocide, you can't advocate to give them defensive weapons. You can't advocate to give them anything. It doesn't make sense. Dude, that Phantom Hammer murderer only follows you. They're such a loser. They made an account just to harass you. Wait, they haven't responded, though. I asked one question and they buckled. Even though they created the sock account exclusively to follow me. We haven't heard from them since. Sadly enough. Wonder why. Wonder why they quieted down. Anyway. But yeah, the Bernie position is ridiculous. He knows better. He should know better. He should be on the forefront of this conversation, especially as things have moved in his direction. Okay? More and more people coming to this recognition of what Israel is doing and what Israel society broadly has fucking defended as permissible has allowed me to also continue speaking out on certain things that I did in the beginning as well, but not to the same degree. Okay? If your goal is to stop this bloodshed, if your goal is to stop this violence, you have to be a leader in this movement. You have to recognize that as discourse moves in your direction, you can continue moving unless you think that's the only thing you want, unless you think that, we just want to stop some weapons going to Israel. Bernie Sanders today, yet again, refused to apply genocide to Gaza. Even as Israeli genocide scholars, human rights groups, and courts use that term. Meanwhile, listen to John Mersheimer with Tucker today, explaining why it's classic genocide and the U.S. should stop funding it.
In Ukraine?
Yeah, I seriously don't understand her calculations sometimes. What does she think she's getting out of these choices? What are deals being made? Whatever they are, they hardly seem worth it. The only thing I've been able to conclude about AOC recent Marjorie Taylor Greene take is that her ego got in the way. She didn't want to hand it to that demon, even if it was the right thing to do. Okay, if you don't want to hand it to that demon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, then you be the person who is pushing for this amendment. Do you understand? That's my expectation. That's what I'm advocating for. I'm saying, why let Tucker Carlson, I talked to people in Gaza, okay, on a daily fucking basis. They have access to the internet. And what they see from the internet is that it's always right-wingers that are speaking out on Palestinian lives. It's never liberals. People literally think liberals don't give a fuck about Palestinian lives. Part of that is because the market is flooded with right-wing propaganda, no matter what. Okay? But there is a truth to this. There is a truth to this. When you have a void, when there is a messaging gap on the issue that everyone recognizes is a genocide, cynical grifters like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene and even fucking Nicholas Fuentes are going to take advantage of that. They are going to be seen as the prominent figures that speak out on these atrocities. Why the fuck would you ever allow that to happen? It doesn't make sense, especially if you truly do care about the plight of the Palestinians. It's a 92-8 issue, okay? You got the Tucker Carlsons of the fucking planet speaking out on these atrocities when 65% of the Republican Party's base of support still likes what Israel's doing in Gaza. Okay? How the fuck did this happen? Part of that is because no matter what happens, okay, right-wingers are always going to be more prominent. Twitch's biggest Zionist propagandist, Zach Hoyt-Asmengol, defended U.S. funding to Iron Dome, saying Israel needs to defend itself. He claimed he wasn't explicitly supporting Israel, only to be shut down by someone in the chat asking, then why are we paying for it? What is this fucking face that he makes? What is that? Fucking gross. In terms of like how Israel has dealt with Gaza or whatever, but they don't like the negative consequences of Israel doing that, which is like the Iron Dome and its security.
But the negative consequences, what he means by that is when terrorists from Hamas, like on October 7th, came over and they raped and killed Israeli citizens.
Yeah. This guy's based, by the way. Based. He's so based. He's basely defending Israel's right to defend itself, guys. Chat. It's kind of base, right? Israel's kind of base still, right? Because they're killing Palestinian cockroaches, right? Based.
And then also because you have...
Yeah. Remember October 7. That's what he's doing here, okay? Remember October 7. How is the Iron Dome supposed to fucking stop October 7, dumb fuck? What are you talking about? The Iron Dome was already working in operation during October 7. What a stupid fucking argument. The only way to prevent October 7 from happening is by allowing Palestinians to live with dignity and have their sovereignty, okay? When Palestinians are no longer being destroyed, killed, genocided, ethnically cleansed, being removed forcibly from their fucking lands, then there is no need for armed conflict. It's that simple. Guys, it's based, right? October 7, right? Netanyahu can fuck my wife. I'm based, though.
Remember, why does Israel have the Iron Dome? Well, it's simple. It's because people from these terrorist organizations shoot rockets and RPGs into Israel, and Israel needs the Iron Dome to protect themselves. Now, obviously, this doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean I'm, supporting Israel.
Oh, yeah, I'm not. I'm just saying that, their reasoning for why they have to defend themselves from these scary Muslims is sound. Who the fuck still looks at this dude and doesn't realize what the fuck's going on? You gotta be real stupid, dude.
But, let's be honest, right? The citizens themselves and the people don't have any sort of, they don't have blood on their hands. They're not doing that. Why are we paying for it? I don't know.
Perishing. You are left with a country that is packed to the fucking gills with... Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying we should be paying for it. Yeah. Okay, what are you saying? You're just instantly on I'm going to disagree with whatever the fuck Hassan is saying mode, and it puts you at odds with some in your chat, I guess. Again, it's an untenable position to have. Anyway, here's Seamus Malakov Zali's suspicion on why Israel is doing this counter messaging operation to say oh, these starving children weren't actually starving. They had genetic conditions. I have this pit in my stomach based on how it was before. Plant the idea that all these images of famine are people who would already be emaciated or sick somehow, and then you could just pretend all the masses that will die in Gaza are media fabrications or out of context. How many of us will remember the stringent insistence after Al-Ahli that the IDF would never target a hospital? Then the hospital Al-Shifa became the main focus of its attacks. Then all hospitals in Gaza became targets with little fabricated justification. The seeds were sown. The incessant nitpicking of images of the hungry and the oppressed so as to sow doubt about the well-documented crimes as a clear equivalent. Holocaust denialism. The blueprint is there, and Israel and its backers are using it for their own gain to cover up their own crimes. Now, I think that is the attempt, yes, but I don't think the public is listening to it anymore because Al-Ahli happened far too close to October 7. And those who understood what Israel does immediately were like, of course this is Israel. And that's why there was so much enmity directed against people like myself who said, dude, what the fuck are you saying? This is very likely that it was Israel. That's the reason why the BBC and all of these other mainstream institutions initially also came to that fucking conclusion. Okay? I need you to understand that the environment, the messaging environment, and the opinion that people had towards Israel and towards Palestinians was very different than it is now. Al-Ahli was far too close to October 7, and Israel was enjoying a lot of support and empathy at that point, which is why that kind of sentiment initially worked. Okay? 22 months in, it no longer works. You can have it's like Benjamin Netanyahu going on Nelk Boys. Okay? Any other person, any other time and place, that is not going to invoke this negative reaction. As a matter of fact, it could even help Benjamin Netanyahu's PR. But it is so far gone in the eyes of the public that these are such irredeemable monsters that when Benjamin Netanyahu goes on the Nelk Boys podcast, the Nelk Boys end up getting shit on rather than getting highlighted as doing sick ass cool things with like foreign leaders. Israel is so radioactive that defending Israel at this point only causes negative repercussions for the institutions that try to do it. Do you understand? That's just the situation. And I think there are still people who are so stupid and so oblivious and so predisposed with like whatever kind of drama slop content that has worked for them, like the Asmongols of the world, that they just don't realize that this is the reality, that like the attitude is dramatically swung in the opposite direction. Someone like Asmongold still obviously falls mercy to whatever his chat is saying. His North Star is his chat. And they offer some moderate pushback in these situations. But there's only so many fuck Hassan moments that he can have while in defense of Israel until even his community turns on him and says, nah, dude, nope, you're done. This is fucking bullshit. You're defending Israel and it's fucking bullshit. Because he is. He is doing that. He is defending Israel when he says stuff like that. What is this? Here's another.
Remember when I said Adolf is coming back and in a big way? 82,000 likes. I tried to tell you guys. I tried to say it. Nobody wanted to listen. Remember when I said Adolf is coming back and in a big way?
Based. Based, bro. So based. It's such a funny position to be in, by the way, where you're like simultaneously pro Adolf Hitler. You can't obviously say it to that degree, but also you're pro Israel. It's just okay. Yeah. I'm glad that you're stoked that Adolf Hitler is back. It's just such a weird ideological conundrum. A weird pretzel that you have put yourself into. Now, of course, listen. What Israel is doing is no different than what Adolf Hitler did to the Jews, okay? So what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, ideologically, it's fascist, okay? And there are actual neo-Nazis that understand this reality and defend Israel on those boundaries. Richard Spencer comes to mind. Well, this time, Hassan, the problem is the Muslims. Yeah, exactly. A reminder that the editors of the New York Times refused to issue a correction on Screams Without Words, even after 50 tenured journalism professors implored them to do so. Journalism professors call on New York Times to review its October 7 report. A major investigative report into sexual violence and the Hamas attack on Israel has drawn criticism inside and outside the newspaper. Remember, people tried to say I was a fucking rape denialist for this reason, and they still do to this day. Because I said the New York Times' own internal reporting on the matter showed that they did not abide by the editorial standards. This was in 2024, April 29th, 2024. But it was very important. It was very important for Israel's purpose. Israel had to farm as much scary propaganda as they possibly could. They couldn't just like talk about the actual atrocities that took place because there were plenty of them. But it wasn't enough that they talked about the actual atrocities. They had to fucking say babies were being beheaded, mass rapes were being committed and directed by Hamas, all of this shit, so that people would be, at least for the first couple of months, and if Israel had its wishes to this day, be totally comfortable with the genocidal campaign that Israel is committed to. And make no mistake, during the Nuremberg trials, Nazis would say the prisoners that died from disease were only the elderly and children who always get sick anyway. And besides, food is hard to get during wartime. This is a cornerstone argument in Holocaust denial. This is part of the reason why I fucking despise the likes of Nick Fuentes, because he engages in this kind of ahistorical and very dangerous Holocaust denial for the original Holocaust. The first one. Whenever you see it was more like 2 million or 1 million, that's what they're doing, subtracting people that died from disease, or there weren't that many concentration camps. They are subtracting the factories that leased prisoners of larger camps for labor. The prisoners were in crowded barracks, so how are we supposed to stop nature? I would rewatch those trials because the same lines are being used right now. It is fucking insane that Israel basically, after all of the years and years of Holocaust studies, decades of Holocaust studies, have basically studied the Nazi line so they could commit to it bar for bar. How insane. So while I do think that the purpose of this kind of whitewashing, laundering narrative is to basically get people on board to say, maybe it's not a genocide or whatever, and these people are just like dying, like it's Holocaust denial, right? I don't think it's working. It works only on people that already are fully on board with what Israel is doing. It gives them, I guess, like some space to navigate conversations, to point to something falsely. But for the average public, this is not moving them away from their position. The only area where this works, like I've stated time and time again, is Hamas. But Hamas is the only distractive mechanism that still has some weight to it. Okay? But Israel has also so consistently said everyone is Hamas that even that doesn't work. Okay? Because it makes no sense. Like the death and destruction campaign is undeniable. Bro, it works on Bernie Sanders, does it not? It works on Bernie Sanders because he is committed to the liberal Zionist position. Yeah, of course, it works on Bernie Sanders because he's already there. He doesn't need to hear but Hamas. He already thinks but Hamas. And that is precisely the reason why so many people to this day still fucking go along with this narrative that I'm a fucking terrorist. I'm a terrorist. People come in here and still say you're a terrorist. J Ty, thank you for the 5 gifted. Hashem HM, thank you for the 10 gifted. The reason why they do this is because I contextualize why militant resistance exists in this region. I explain to you how Hezbollah came about, how Hamas came about, how Ansar Allah came about. I don't expect every single person to also come to this conclusion. And you can argue you can argue with me on whether or not you think I'm wrong about something, but you can't just simply say, oh, but Hamas, because that's just a thought terminating cycle. That is a thought terminating term that you are utilizing specifically to stop this conversation. Bro, will you talk about anything else? Okay, take a shower, shower 21.
This morning, the global impact of the desperation in Gaza, where the pause to let some aid in continues, but the hunger is severe. Yesterday, an airdrop of aid landing in the sea, Palestinians risking their lives for a taste of food. The Israeli government has said there is no starvation.
For the record, under normal circumstances, Israel will be shooting these guys. The only reason why they have stopped their military operations in certain areas after telling Palestinians that they're not allowed to go into the fucking water is because of all the bad press they got over this past couple of weeks.
And said Hamas is behind the pain in Gaza.
Who is responsible for this tough reality? I answered, this is Hamas.
On his trip abroad, President...
Yeah. This is, it's Hamas. It's Hamas. Hamas terrorist, over and over again, right? This is why when I hear that from someone who says, yeah, what Israel's doing is wrong, but Hamas, it functionally is no different than what Israel is saying, okay? Just because on the one side you are like, oh, well, Israel's doing a genocide, but Hamas, just because you come to that recognition doesn't mean you believe it. You're just saying that as a way to create a permission structure for why you think, who you truly think is responsible for the death and destruction. That's it. That's it. But Hamas is simply a way to try. Do you condemn Hamas? But Hamas. These are mechanisms to try and offer credence to Israel's genocide. There are no two sides in a genocide. You don't say but the Jewish partisans when talking about the Holocaust. Well, some do. They're fucking Holocaust deniers. They're Nazis themselves and neo-Nazis right now. Okay?
President Trump has spoken out yesterday discussing the First Lady's reaction.
She thinks it's terrible. And those are kids, whether they talk starvation or not, those are kids that are starving.
Saying the U.S. sent $60 million for food aid and will soon open its own food centers in Gaza.
We're going to get a lot of money to the area so they can get some food.
While home...
Dude, this is so funny. Did you see what Mike from PA said recently about the Jewish ethnicity? Really messed up. I'm not sure if you talked about it, okay? Click on the user card. Hasn't spoken in here since October 7. One time. Is this a good source? Twitter. One time to be like, your source is Twitter. Erming. I don't know what the fuck Mike from PA said, but I don't think you are an honest actor here. I don't think you are a fan that's coming in following this October 25th. Or April 25th, 2020, and noticeably absent from the conversation since October 7, 2023, only to come back once on 5/19/2024 to go, is this a good source? Twitter? And then to turn around and be like, what did Mike from PA say? I don't know what the fuck Mike from PA said. I don't give a shit, okay? And I don't care about what your concern is. Let's be fucking real. You are not concerned. You are just trying to simply farm a clip. Again, do you feel the walls closing in on you? Do you feel that? Does that make you scared a little bit? that every day, every single day, more and more people are coming to the conclusion that Israel is doing a genocide? Does that scare you a little bit, that your position is untenable and more people are aware that it is untenable, that more and more people are aware that this is a horrifying reality that is unfolded? Does that scare you a little bit? You have the option. You have anonymity. You don't have to try and farm clips. You could just easily be like, you know what? I don't think that this is appropriate. Yeah, see? Look. Doesn't mean you can say horrible shit about Jewish people. Like I said, I'm not Michael from Pennsylvania. I'm Hassan Abi Piker, okay? But everything I do know about Michael from Pennsylvania, I assume that he was clip-chimped. Okay? Again, Israel is genociding Palestinians. I was just wondering if you condemned it. No, you are not wondering anything. You are looking for a clip. You're looking for me to fucking defend it or something. I'm not. So now you're going to talk about it? No, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not. Go take it up with Mike. Okay? I can't believe you're fucking drama baiting while we're in the process of talking about literally even the likes of Marjorie Taylor fucking Greene calling the Gaza humanitarian crisis a genocide. What do you think is more newsworthy in this moment? You trying to actively get a clip off to be like, Hassan defends Michael from Pennsylvania. I'm not. I don't know what the fuck he said, and I don't care, quite frankly. Okay? Go take it up with him. I care about what's going on right now. And you should too. You should too. Okay? Everybody always tries to find anything they possibly fucking can. What is this? I mean, this doesn't mean it. Oh, Loner Box, Relevant, Chud Logic, Hunter Avalon, Stardust, Keffels. I wonder what this guy's point of view is. H3H3 Productions. He said a slur. Let's not defend him today. I don't know what the fuck he said. I'm not defending him. I don't give a shit. My point is, I don't give a fuck, okay? Literally, every single time there is anyone, myself included, you are quite literally in the chat of someone who has been actively fucking clip-chimped into oblivion, okay? By bad faith actors. Shut the fuck up. Anytime someone says this is unconscionable, anytime somebody says this is a genocide, people literally try to find any moment they fucking can to be like, this is a bad person. Okay? I promise there's a secret reason for why this person, there's a secret hidden reason for why this person is actually against Israel's genocide. Not on the conditions that it's a genocide. It's because they're actually secretly anti-Semitic. Okay? I'm not responsible for other people or in what you have seen of their statements. Okay? I don't care. Let's continue.
In the U.S., political fallout is growing. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Trump ally, writing, "It's the most truthful and easiest thing to say that October 7th in Israel was horrific and all hostages must be returned. But so is the genocide, humanitarian crisis, and starvation happening in Gaza." Israel has denied the accusation of genocide. But other Republicans disagree with Greene, and many, while condemning the hunger, say Hamas is at fault.
You've got a terrorist group like Hamas operating in that region. They're going to intercept and divert a lot of that food aid.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it's the Hamas. Hamas is intercepting and diverting
That's going in there.
Yesterday, 40 Senate Democrats sending a letter to the Trump administration pushing for more aid.
very, very disappointing. The Netanyahu government has choked off humanitarian aid since virtually the very beginning, but most brutally recently.
While tensions continue to be high, at a town hall in Illinois yesterday, Democratic Congressman Bill Foster repeatedly interrupted by audience members against the war.
What the fuck do they think Hamas does with food aid? It doesn't matter. But Hamas is like to stop the conversation. Hamas is a terrorist group, but Hamas, shut the fuck up. That's what it is. Listen, anytime someone says, but Hamas, or do you condemn Hamas, understand that the purpose of that, you should just substitute it with, why do you care about this? Shut the fuck up about this. I don't want to hear about this. That's it. That's it. That is the only purpose, okay? Why is Hamas stealing food aid? Because they're evil. It's Hamas. What do you mean? Are you defending Hamas? Do you defend terrorism? Are you defending terrorism? Doesn't matter that it's been debunked a million times over. Doesn't matter that it makes no logical fucking sense. Oh, they're stealing aid so they can like get more support and get more people on board to fight against what? Israel's fucking genocide of the Palestinian population? Is that what you're saying? Because guess what? Hamas, in that regard, in defense of the Palestinian population, is both engaging in an act that is legal under international human rights. Legal, but it's also fucking moral, okay? This is not an assessment of October 7. Everything past that point of Israel's illegal occupation and bombardment of the Gaza Strip that is a fucking genocide, anything that the spontaneous militia has engaged in, whether it's Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PFLP, DFLP, or even former Fatah members, any time that they shoot and kill an Israeli soldier in the Gaza Strip, okay, inside of the Gaza Strip, they are literally engaging in a legal act. Anytime an Israeli soldier steps foot inside of the Gaza Strip, they are engaging in an illegal act. Do you understand? It's not even black. It's not even a gray area, okay? This is legally black and white. Doesn't matter what the fuck people say on television. Do you understand? It does not fucking matter. And beyond the legal argument, it is the moral thing to do, okay? Same with the West Bank. Exactly. The Jenin brigades in the West Bank are legal. They are legally defending their ancestral homeland. They have the right and responsibility recognized under international human rights to actively smoke Israeli occupying force troops because the Israeli occupying force's presence is illegal in the West Bank. It's ridiculous. No one ever wants to say the truth. And it makes me so angry, okay? It is quite literally legal. I know it's hard to comprehend this because everything you've been taught, all the social conditioning that you have heard from television, from stereotyping in the media, from every fucking book that you've read implies scary Muslim, brown, don't know about that, probably don't have a right to defend itself, but it doesn't matter. Under international rights, under international law, Palestinians have a legal right to defend themselves, okay? They do, both in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. Under international human rights, Israel does not have a right to occupy militarily the West Bank or even the Gaza Strip. But because they are a belligerent occupier on the Gaza Strip, Israel does not have any right to bomb the Gaza Strip. Isn't that fucking crazy? Isn't that crazy? This is just like a fundamental truth. It is literally just in the books. Like, it is quite literally the truth, okay? And yet, you will never hear that from mainstream media. No one will ever even touch that. It is the third rail. No one can say this fundamental truth. It blows my mind. People only recognize it when the people defending their homeland is Ukrainian. They're white. Only then do they recognize it. Of course, Ukraine has a fucking fundamental right under human rights to defend their borders, a sovereign nation defending its borders from an illegal and horrifyingly bloody invasion from another country, the Russians. But when it's brown people doing it, everyone goes, well, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. It's ridiculous. I have been consistent on this over and over again, just like my advocacy for a ceasefire has been consistent over and over again for years at this point.
And in Gaza, the fighting crossed a grim threshold yesterday. Palestinian health officials said 60,000 people have been killed since Hamas's October 7th terror attacks in 2023. And yesterday, the United Kingdom said it will recognize Palestinian statehood unless Israel agrees to a ceasefire by September and improves the humanitarian situation in Gaza.
Have you considered that I find you anti-Semitic purely based on vibes and my racism? I have considered that. Many people who say I'm anti-Semitic are either themselves ironically anti-Semitic or or it is just pure racism when they're like, well, he's Muslim, he's a scary Islamist. Hilarious to say that I, of all fucking people, am an Islamist. Whatever the fuck that means.
That would make the UK the second G7 country to offer that recognition. Savannah?
Matt Bradley in Tel Aviv, thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. And don't forget, you can catch the Today Show every morning on NBC or take Today when you're on the go. Just follow the Today podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
This morning, international pressure growing on Israel to end the war in Gaza as UN-backed experts warn the worst-case